right, welcome everyone. We are very excited today to talk about compliance in the age of AI and automation. We have a jam-packed 45 minutes, a lot of great content that we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. Let me go to the next slide here, Ben. We'll do introductions of ourselves here in just a second. But high level, what we're going to do today is introduce myself and Vinayak. We will talk a little bit about the difference between AI and automation, and then we're going to get away with them from these slides and really just have a great conversation around the intersection of compliance, AI, and automation. So very much more like a fireside chat here today. Hopefully there's a lot of great content in here, and we will wrap up with some great resources as well. So just to not further delay introductions, my name is Chappelle Ryan. I am CEO of WorkBright. WorkBright is a best-in-class I-9 software solution and a compliance platform. I've been in the space for over a decade here, and on top of just running a software company and being in the middle of our own AI transformation, I'm a total automation nerd. If I do something for the fifth time, I try and find a way to automate or outsource it. That's in my personal and professional life. So really excited to facilitate this conversation today and learn as well from my co-host here and our panelist, Vinayak. Vinayak is VP of Product at Instawork. But maybe could you give just a brief background of what brings you to being such an expert today on this topic? I know you've been at Instawork for a while, but have a robust career ahead of that. So maybe a quick elevator pitch of your background.
Great to be here, Chappelle. Thanks for having me. So for those of you who might not be familiar, my name is Vinayak. I'm the VP of Product at Instawork. And Instawork is the largest and fastest growing flexible staffing marketplace in North America with over 8 million professionals. And we serve a lot of industries that have frontline workers and deal with a lot of various labor and compliance issues, along with making sure that local businesses can get staffed with the people they need really, really quickly. So happy to be here. And especially in the new world of AI and automation, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about today.
That's right. And really progressive solutions that you guys build, which is why I'm so excited to have you on this today. As a WorkBright customer, I've been really impressed seeing the way that you guys think through product decisions and the way that you move it. So looking forward to the conversation. Next slide. Before we jump in, we do just want to do a quick definition here. We're going to be talking about AI and automation, and the lines are blurred today and probably will continually be as we move forward. So when we talk about automation, we're really talking about repetitive tasks, processes with minimal human intervention, really what I talked about, right? Like 5 years ago, it would have been all automation, where we've done something for the fifth time. How can we automate this? My iRobot vacuum being a good example of ways that we do things like that. AI is what's coming forward. This is the machine learning that you're hearing all about, problem solving, adapting, and learning as it goes. Vinayak, how do you define the difference between the two, and how do you think about those?
This is a good question, and the way I think about this is that the AI and automation are really blending together, and ultimately they're both in service of things that we want to accomplish in the real world. So whether it's a business trying to optimize a process or make things more efficient, or if we're trying to provide a service for a worker or professional, the goal really is to make lives easier and operations more efficient. And whether you call it AI or automation, I think the lines are really going to be blurred, especially these days with AI agents being at the intersection of what we would consider to be automation and intelligence. But I do think that we've always had some form of automation, and we've also always had some form of intelligence. It's just that now we're in the third or fourth incarnation of both these technologies, where they're blending together a lot more.
Yeah, that's really helpful and good context as we kind of talk to both sides of this. Let's WorkBright team, let's get away from the slides and let's just get into some of the content here in the conversation. And we're going to start kind of big picture talking about AI compliance, high volume hiring. But before we do that, let's just take a minute and define compliance. So WorkBright, we are in the workforce authorization compliance Form I-9 software and facilitating a lot of the wage theft notifications and different things that intersect with employment compliance. What other areas of compliance are you thinking about when you're thinking about AI and automation?
Yeah, so I would think about compliance, which is quite a broad category, in roughly 4 buckets. The first one is identity. Who are you, and how do we know that? The second one I would say is integrity or trust, where are you who you say you are, and are your credentials valid, whatever they may be. The third one is probably industry specific or work specific. So think something like a tip certificate for a bartender,
Mhm.
or a forklift license for a driver. And then finally, I would say there is labor infrastructure or insurance related compliance. So think like workers' comp, minimum wage rules, meal and rest breaks, and other rules that we need to make sure are followed for both worker protection and compliance with like federal, local, and state regulations. So four
Yeah.
buckets, right? Identity, trust, industry, and I would say regulatory and insurance.
Yeah, and I want this to be conversational. I also don't want to go down rabbit holes. It certainly makes
Yeah.
me think, though, as you're talking, how although they are distinct buckets, there is a lot of overlap in them. So, for example, in Workbright, we have document verification, which takes the Section 2 documents that someone is submitting with their Form I-9, runs them through a series of checks to help with that identity verification. But identity verification could come up funnel as well. We're hearing a lot more today about identity fraud, especially with E-Verify, people stealing valid documents with someone. So they do overlap a bit. And so thinking about them distinctly is interesting versus saying, how can we tackle all of these together in one solution? Yeah.
Yeah, the overlap also comes in technology, because ultimately, if you're doing document verification of any kind, the underlying technology, especially today in the world of AI, might be quite similar. The technology that you need to take a picture of someone's passport and say and ask the question like, is this passport valid or expired, might be the same underlying technology that you might use
Right.
to look at whether someone's driver's license or forklift certification is valid or expired. And so while those might fit into identity versus industry in terms of compliance, the underlying technology might be the same.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'll try and keep this high level for now. How are you seeing, particularly AI, because automation's been around a little longer, changing the game right now with compliance, especially in staffing, gig work, where hiring is high volume, fast moving? What opportunities are you most excited about that are being presented today?
That's a great question. One kind of analogy that comes to mind is uh, is something like TSA PreCheck, where
Sure.
it there was a world where every single person would have to get checked by a human, right? And then we introduced scanners, right, so that at least part of the check can be done by a machine. And fast forward, now we have something that's like TSA PreCheck, where people actually get what I would say de-risked even before they go to the airport, and that's all done with technology. And I think a similar analogy would apply to a worker or professional going to work on their first day, right? Whereas maybe a while ago you had to go in and you had to bring all of your documents, and the first day you spend at work is mostly doing paperwork. It's getting your payroll set up, your work authorization set up, getting your documents verified. You have to go to some department in a building that's hard to find, and meet the person who's gonna like look at your documents and sign off on them. And
Yeah.
now you can do most of that online, maybe even on your phone. And so I think that's that type of change is happening for every single step of the process, right? Whether it's work authorization or payroll or other certifications and badging that you might need to be on a particular work site.
Yeah. I would say, I would add to what you're saying. I so agree. It's not just happening, I think, from end users, from employees that are frontline that are applying for jobs. It's almost being demanded by employers that they're not having that dimly lit room experience of sitting in a back office, filling out their name on the same piece of paperwork 20 times that they didn't need to, right? How are you seeing some of like uh, the workforce mentality change around AI and what they're looking for and demanding?
So I would say there's two separate trends that I think are converging. One is really in terms of how workers and professionals view their careers and the work opportunities available to them. So I think over time, over the last decade or so, we've definitely seen a secular shift to people being more flexible in terms of the opportunities they pursue. They want more flexible work schedules. Maybe they don't want to go to the same place and work every day. Maybe they want to work 2 days in one place, 3 days in another place, but they also want to be open to seasonal extra earning opportunities during holidays, during peak seasons, game time, right? If you're working at a stadium, and so I think that has become a lot easier because of some of the streamlining with AI and automation. Because now, as a worker or professional, you can use an app or you can use technology to reduce the amount of paperwork and compliance that you have to do to get in somewhere. And it's almost like a shadow pre-check that workers are kind of enjoying now, where they're like, oh yeah, I have all these documents. I already have the images on my phone. I just have to upload them somewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe they're pre-credentialed to go work at 5 different locations. And so that actually gives them a lot more flexibility, which helps with the general trend of workers wanting more flexibility.
Yeah. And then there's so many things, in your position as VP of product that you probably see as potential for making this easier for the end workforce. But there is this interesting layer in what we're talking about as well, which is all of the regulating authorities over the way that we deliver this. So I know like this was a particular challenge at Workbright where we share a similar vision of, I guess let's call it more of like a blockchain where someone has their credentials and they could move between employer and they could do things. But GDPR, CCPA, there's limiting factors in our ability to do some of these things. So when you're looking at maybe introducing automation and AI into your workforce, how are you keeping track of all of the various regulating challenges with what you're doing and navigating that?
I would say that is both a growing challenge and also growing opportunity. Since I'll give an example, which is slightly outside of what we're talking about, which is for minimum wage, right?
Sure.
Um, I would say in any given month or week, even there's probably some change to minimum wage at a state, local, or county level somewhere in the country,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if we're working in all 50 states in the United States with tens of thousands of different employers and work sites in different industries, then we need to make sure that we're helping both the employers comply with those minimum wage regulations, and we also want to make sure that the workers are treated fairly. And so that's a great example where you could imagine that maybe 10 years ago, there would have been a whole department of people that are just watching the news
Yeah.
and looking at the filings to see what changed. And now we can do that mostly with AI, where anytime there's a change, we can get the updates almost in real time and push them out across the whole platform. And so having one of the things that AI is enabling is what I would call personalization at scale, where you can now do things at scale that previously might have been hard, or you had to do like a one size fits all. You no longer have to do one size fits all because AI enables you to get the custom perfect fit for every single use case, for every single employer based on their requirements, and for every single local, state, or federal regulation that's happening.
Yeah. Personalization, such a good topic right now. I'm sure a lot of people on here are dealing with all of the complexities with temporary protected statuses. Are my workers still eligible to work with all of the changes that are coming down? We're giving customers a lot of similar advice. We support customers with information around this, but also setting up AI automation around the people that are in your workforce, really knowing what's in there. It all starts with how good your data is and bringing that in there. And so what we're really talking about here is balancing speed versus accuracy. And when it comes to compliance, accuracy is very important, that we're on the right side of that. So tell me a little bit more about like, where do you think people matter when you're looking at some of the, like we can automate and we can use AI to do a lot of these workforces, and where are you putting in human checks into your process to make sure that accuracy is just as important as the speed and efficiency that you're giving to the employee experience?
That's a great question, and I actually don't think that there's a general rule of thumb to follow here. In most cases, I think it's very use case specific. I'll go back to the example of TSA, where even in the world with pre-check, right, and even in the world with automated scanning, you still do have a system where there's a random sample of people, right? Arguable. I know that it's controversial how random it really is, but there's a system where you still have randomly sampled human checks That's a very common tactic in risk mitigation and kind of risk operations, where you want to have it be 80-90% automated, but you still want to have human checks, essentially as a way to both deter bad actors and reduce risk, but also to make sure that the systems are working as intended, and that there's always like a safety catch when machines or AI don't work for us the way we want to, right? You can see that in anything from like document verification, where you might say, okay, we're going to sample 1 out of every 100 documents and make sure that it's going correctly, to having a fallback system where if something goes wrong, then the person or the product user in question can actually reach a human to kind of review the case and make sure that everything is fine. And then lastly, when it comes to compliance and regulations, ultimately, we're all humans responsible for humans. And so even if there's a lot of automation happening, at the end of the day, the buck's going to stop with a human, right? You're never going to put an AI on trial. You're never going to, an AI is never going to be sued. Maybe one day when we have AGI, that'll happen, but we're a little bit far away from that. And so you still need a human to take responsibility for the outcomes. And so I think anytime that a human is responsible for the outcomes, you need to have at least some type of human facility in the process that's available.
That's right. And this stuff is so tricky. I'm thinking about our own product build experience when we were looking at something like document verification, and we worked very closely with our counsel. They said, at the end of the day, if someone's document is failing, it can't pass, we need to allow them to proceed with their I-9 so that the employer doesn't get in trouble for creating undue burdens that could or could not be acceptable in there. So making sure that you're working with vendors that are also up on these regulations and keeping you on the right side. I think there's a lot of misnomers, with some of the maybe out of the box solutions that come with big providers where they're not so focused on these very acute pains. Like, it makes a lot of sense to us as product leaders to say, hey, let's reorder the list A, B, and C documents in the order of the ones that come most common. And USCIS has been very clear, you cannot do that, right? But unless you were kind of specialized in this area of compliance, you wouldn't know that, and you might build something that made a lot of sense and overlook some of the accuracy complexities with some of these things. So it's a really good one. And we're kind of talking about this here, but what other maybe misconceptions or things are you seeing that people should be keeping an eye on as they're thinking about this space and going into? What have been some of the gotchas that you've maybe come across?
I would say in terms of the objectives of using AI and automation, I think people are still figuring out what the best objective to accomplish is, right? Is it speed? Is it accuracy? Is it fairness? Is it cost reduction? And I think that we're still, as an industry, figuring out which of these things is going to be the best, or how do you accomplish all of them. And I think probably the most common mistake I see is people optimizing for the wrong one of these things in their use case.
Sure.
Right? For example, if you're making sure that that you want to provide, let's say, a safe work environment, and so you're doing a criminal record check, right, for people coming to the workplace. Maybe you're staffing like a K through 12 facility, where it's really, really important to make sure that the people working alongside kids have a record that would allow that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of place where you probably don't want to trade off cost and speed for accuracy, because a single mistake can be extremely costly. So that's a good example of where, if you're doing that at scale, it's tempting to say like, oh, well, we could save X amount of money and we can go X, Y amount faster on average. But you might not be optimizing for the right thing. And I think the vice versa is also true, where you might say like, well, when we have a completely human process, we already make 10% errors, right? And so if we switch to an AI process and now we make 5% errors, that's okay, right? It's okay if the AI is only 95% accurate in certain cases, because we know that we're at least doing better than the human error. And so what you're comparing it to, I think, is really important also, where people will say like, oh, well, it's not 100% accurate, so we shouldn't use it. But the question isn't, is it 100% accurate? The question is it better than it was yesterday?
Wow, it's such a good point and way to think about it. I would love to think about like the worker experience a little bit. So when we're developing product, we go through similar lenses. We always start with compliance, number one. I mean, we're in workforce authorization. We need to make sure we're on the right side of that. A very close number two for us is security before we go to speed and throughput. And we look at those two first. And so when you think about worker experience and trust, especially when we're talking about some of these worker experiences where we're holding their most personally identifiable information, their social security numbers, their direct deposit information. Um, what are some of the risks or challenges you see with security with AI and automation, and how do you navigate those?
Uh, well, I guess that's a very broad question. So I'll try to just a couple of things that I think are interesting.
Yeah,
When it comes to worker security, your like the your colleagues matter, and like where you go to work matters. And just as an employer wants to make sure that the person who's coming to work at their location is a good actor, the worker also needs some protection and security to make sure that the place that they're going to is safe, that they're following safety standards and compliance, and that the colleagues that they're going to be working with are going to treat them well, and that they're going to get paid on time, and so on. And We have seen cases now where AI is being used to commit fraud. And what that means is that if you're a good actor and you're trying to make an honest day's work, and there's a bad actor who's using AI tools to fraudulently take your spot or get in, that's not very good. And so, as platforms and employers, we have to now also protect workers from bad actors and fraudsters. We've also seen there kind of being operations to scam workers, right?
yeah,
Where there's fraudsters that are posing as employers to collect information from the workers, and so on. I think from like a technology perspective, there's actually some really nice things in security with AI because it's becoming easier to do a lot of spot checks that might have been more difficult before.
sure.
So, a good example might be comparing someone's full name on their passport to their driver's license.
Mhm.
I'm sure the Workbright team is intimately familiar with the fact that people don't always put their full name. Sometimes the middle initial is missing, and so sometimes it can be hard. But I think AI makes a lot of that stuff easier now.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I'm thinking about, when we think about this kind of security intersection, trust, cybersecurity, I mean, to your point, phishing is just getting crazy. We had a new employee start yesterday, and she slacked me at the end of the day and said, I just got a text from you, seemed kind of odd, wanted to make sure it was really you. Her first day of employment, like they had picked up on that, like the same tools that we're using
Yeah.
to support people, bad actors are using to create documents. One of our marketing team members took him under 10 minutes to create fraudulent IDs. So, such a good way to think about, are we trusting the people that we're working with, as well as how are we protecting people in our product, and then with cybersecurity and some of the ways that people can get in now. Um, I'm curious just on this last thing of kind of like misconceptions that might be available in the marketplace. What are we seeing maybe from internal teams, right? I'm going through this transformation of AI with Workbright of saying, how can AI and automation support our existing teams internally? And I would say largely our team is fantastic and very on board with moving everything forward. But there's some threats that are presented as well. How are you navigating that with your internal teams, maybe add-ins to work? And what misconceptions do you see as we're integrating this more into the way that we work and deliver product?
Uh, I think that probably the biggest misconception that we have today is thinking about AI as this like separate new thing.
Sure.
It's like where people are like, oh well, I have my phone, I have my computer, and I have AI,
Hmm.
right? And there's learning and development programs that are like, oh, learn to AI and so on and so forth. Uh, but really, I mean, I think people should think about AI more like they think about, say, like Microsoft Word, where it's just one more thing that you're going to be using in your day to day life. It's a tool for you. It's going to make you faster. It's going to make you more efficient. Um, and I think I don't know if we need to get into the is AI going to take away your job question today. But what is definitely true is that people who embrace the new tools that are available to them will be more efficient, will do better, and will be able to have a higher output.
Yeah.
Whether that means that instead of checking one document, you can check 100, or whether that means that instead of writing one email, you can write 100 in the same amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm of a similar mindset of it is going to transform the way that we're working, right? Replace, no. Transform, yeah. I think that there's still room for a lot of human interaction. Someone needs to manage, someone needs to build these. And let me just say, like, this can be overwhelming to folks, right? Thinking about what we need to do internally, the way that our products need to change. What are some of the early wins, or we call them like 3-foot tosses, like the first step you can take towards this? How would you advise someone who's just getting into this space and saying, where do I start? How do I look at these things? Where are some of the early wins?
Uh, Good question. Probably the number one thing that I recommend to everyone is that I think it's really about mindset, where instead of trying to say like how should I solve this problem, uh, you might want to just ask your favorite neighborhood AI agent the same question,
Mm,
and just always start with like an AI first mindset. So today before I was hopping on this webinar, I was jotting down some notes just to organize my thoughts, and I stopped midway and I was like, wait, I should just tell ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT that hey, I'm doing this webinar. Here's what it's about. What do you think? And I think that was a place where I caught myself being like, oh man, I'm not being AI first. Like I'm just writing down my thoughts. Um, and I think you can apply that to every single practice that you do today, and that will be like really really illuminating, and give you lots and lots of ideas for quick wins that you can get, depending on what your use case is.
yeah, yep. I think that's a great way to start is thinking with an AI first like mindset in the way that we work and the way that we approach things internally. Um, if you're looking at maybe incorporating some of these things, there's everybody says they're AI, right? We're going to go to this staffing in the gig economy conference here, and AI is going to be on everybody's booth, right? And they are using it at various levels. How do you think about evaluating vendors? When are you thinking about building something yourself versus partnering with? What does your vendor evaluation lens look like?
Oh man, this is a really really good question, and also a really tough one because I think it's changing quite rapidly. I think my answer to this question would have been different 3 months ago versus today, and I think it'll probably be different 3 months from now. So, uh, and I think part of it depends on what competency you have in house, right? So, if you have 10 AI engineers that already work at your company, then you probably should try to build some stuff first. If you have zero, then you should probably default to buying. Uh,
Mhm.
but what I would say is that the kind of core rules of business and principles still apply, which is that you should probably not outsource what you think are your kind of core competencies that are that you need to win in your market, right? Because if you outsource those to a vendor,
Sure.
then someone else can do that too, and then it dilutes your competitive edge, right? So in a world where we're competing for business or for performance, I think that part still applies. The good news is that probably most of the folks that are in our world and maybe listening to this are likely at least a little bit in the people business, and I think that's a competitive advantage that's not going to go away anytime
Yeah.
soon. And so anything that's not related to your core competency, if like if you're running a hotel, then your core competency probably isn't building AI tools. Your core competency is like having an exceptional hospitality experience, and
Yeah.
and so I would not outsource that part
Yep.
to AI, and I would make sure that's retained in house. Your brand, your values, your customer manner, and anything else around bureaucracy or paperwork, or operations. I would see if I can streamline that by using a vendor. And just to give you an example.
Yeah. Yep. That's really helpful. I think it's um, if we are thinking about selecting a vendor, we've decided that this is an area that we should partner with on. I'm seeing some pretty wild AI questionnaires coming from companies at this point that are vetting our technology in here. what are the things that you think they really need to be asking to make sure that someone is on the right side of compliance, that they're keeping up with regulating authorities? Like, how extensive are your questionnaires? I mean, I'm telling you, we've been in one with a Fortune 50 company that is 8 councils long of meetings and things around this technology. They want to move forward and be progressive, but they're getting really hung up on making sure there's no bias, like things that they should be focused on, but it's going really in depth.
Mhm.
Where do you see that line?
Uh, I think as with any new thing, there's both fear and greed at play,
Yeah,
and you can very clearly see that in like whatever, like the 20-page compliance documents that you probably receive as a vendor
yeah,
from some of these larger companies, and a lot of it is just making sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's. Ironically, I think this is actually a place where AI can help a lot. Um, because once you fill out a couple of these, you can actually use AI to maybe fill out 80% of some of this compliance paperwork. That's like I would say, like vendor compliance world. And
yeah,
there's also startups that are doing that, which is really cool.
yeah.
Uh, in terms of safety, I think the world of AI and automation right now is moving so fast, where if you don't do it, you're probably going to be left behind. But if you do jump in, you're probably taking on more risk. And that's a really challenging place to be, especially for larger enterprises, that have significant risk tied to any of these decisions. And these are multi-million-dollar decisions. They're not easily made. I think just having a really great pilot framework that you have internally, and making sure that your internal organization is aligned on how to do pilots and take increasing amounts of risk as a standardized process is really important. That's actually one thing that I've surprisingly not seen um, consistency on,
Hmm.
even from a lot of the larger enterprises, where they don't have a standard formula of like, okay, well, we always do 3-month pilots, and we always
Yeah.
test for these things, and then we always do this check, and then we always have these gates to make our pilots grow. So my one recommendation to any large enterprises that are looking to figure out how do we navigate the speed versus the risk is make sure to develop a standardized pilot program that you can
Right.
go to vendors with and say, hey, look, here's our standard pilot. You go 3, 6, 9 months before we do like a 2 to 3 year commitment. Here's the quality checks that we need to pass, and
Yeah.
just be really tight on defining those, because that's going to help you go so much faster. Yeah,
It's not only beneficial what you're explaining for kind of the speed and the repetition of what you're talking about, it's also a good cover your ass, right? Like
yeah,
having that documented process that we vetted this, here's what we checked for. I mean, let's say down the road, one of these vendors did have bias tests, they didn't conduct proper bias testing, and there was things happening. You could say, well, here's the checks we went through, and they passed these checks. And in the event of an audit or a regulating authority coming in, there would be some passing of that along the way because of the process that you've documented. So that's just such good advice. I think we've covered really like kind of high level AI topics. So if there are specific Q&A, please feel free to write them in. We may have time to answer some of those. But I'd love to dig in just a little more specifically on what you're seeing in staffing and gig. I mean, we've all seen headlines. This is kind of HR tech staffing. There's been a lot of consolidation of the industry, of things moving forward, a lot of emphasis on AI forward tools. Um, what are you seeing for staffing and gig companies that are winning? Where's some of the way that they're moving forward, the way that they're approaching that is really appealing to the marketplace?
uh, that's a good question. I would say, and so we always remind ourselves about two things. One is our mission, which is to create economic opportunity for local businesses and professionals. And the second one is that we always, our internal mantra is that we're always high tech and high touch, both, not just one. And the reason I'm bringing those up is because I think those are increasingly important in terms of like how we think about adopting this new technology and using it to make both businesses and workers better. I'll give you an example. Uh, let's say that let's say that you're working as a dishwasher, and you're like, oh well, I want to I've been chopping onions on the side whenever the prep cook's been out, and I also want to start working as a prep cook because I'll make a couple of bucks extra per hour. But maybe you're not sure how to go and get a food handler's card.
Yeah.
uh, that's a place where an AI agent can really help you and actually help you navigate and maybe even expose you to opportunities that you might not have even thought of before,
Yeah.
or recommend places for you to work that you didn't know about. And so if you think about this idea of having a co-pilot for frontline workers that can help them both expand their skill sets, get achievable kind of
Right.
milestones and certifications that balance kind of like time and cost and work and so on, and kind of help them progressively unlock opportunities. I think that that's really, really powerful because it can be really personalized to the type of work you're doing and kind of what is available to you. Uh, another uh, a good example of this is that if you work in hospitality, your skill set is actually pretty transferable to a lot of other places, and
Yeah.
oftentimes you might not get those opportunities just because you don't know about them, like you just don't know, or you haven't thought about them. Like maybe if you work at a hotel bar, you haven't really considered working at a stadium bar because you just
Mm.
don't have any connections at a stadium, at the local stadium, right? And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing where marketplaces and kind of the new age of staffing marketplaces can really help, um, can have workers. The second thing is what I would call the great reskilling, which is soon going to be upon us,
Mhm.
and that's happening because the landscape is changing. After we had this first like really large churn of workforce pre and post COVID, right? The kind of pendulum swung
Yeah.
both ways as workers got mass laid off and mass rehired and again. I think that's going to continue happening, especially now with some of the fiscal policy from the government in terms of manufacturing, robotics. There's going to be a lot of new types of work, and we're going to need a lot of people that can get paid really, really well to do this. But it's going to take too long if we wait for our university education system to catch up to that.
Yeah.
So I think what we think about a lot is how can you take entire workforces and empower them to explore rapidly new vocational opportunities that have the right combination of training, learning on the job, AI powered content, AI co-pilots for their career guidance, and help them navigate. How do I get the most dollar for my time, and how do I learn the most skills and advance my career the most? I
Yeah.
think these are all really, really great opportunities where we can apply AI, and kind of that's how we're approaching it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about are, there's a lot of talk about how there's some displacement of kind of entry level work. And for recent college grads that are coming out right now, they're kind of the first generation that has grown up with this technology that really thinks about it first, potentially with an over reliance on it in some areas, which is something interesting to manage. But how valuable that is to our existing workforce that hasn't come up with this, that's kind of learning and institutionalizing it in, to pair that with people that think AI first and the way that that might change our workforce. So we're seeing people coming out of colleges as a big advantage right now in leading kind of AI change within workforces and the way that it can disrupt. I love that idea of the great reskill. And for people that might be on this that are saying, oh, I need to get some new skills, where might you point them for some learning in this? It's as simple as asking ChatGPT, how can I learn about this specific to what I'm doing? And it probably has a bunch of good resources, but have you found any to be particularly beneficial over others, or where would you point folks that are wanting to start some of this learning journey?
Uh, that's a that that's a that's a difficult question for me to answer because I wouldn't I also wouldn't know where to start with the pace at which things are moving. Uh, I mean, I could say, well, you can go and read research papers, or you can go and watch the news really closely. But even the types of things that you need to learn is changing really fast. Like I don't think the content's necessarily keeping up. Honestly, I would say YouTube, TikTok, Instagram are probably the most cutting edge places where you can actually find new information and get bite-sized nuggets about it. One of the things that we're doing for frontline workers in this regard is we're starting to have in-app content that's bite-sized
Oh, cool.
that can help you learn, or they can help you coach, right? So you can do like a voice call with an AI that can coach you, and we're also doing kind of peer sourced content where people can share videos of how they're doing different tasks or different skills, right? You can post a video of yourself bartending or teaching someone how to make a cocktail is a good example of that. And I think that's going to be pretty pervasive. So I honestly think that I wouldn't recommend like a particular book or like an online course. I think we're just
So
learning
fast.
together right now in real time, and social media is actually one of the best places to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I will say our whole executive team is kind of going through this a more kind of formalized training, and it is generative AI, right? And one of
Yeah.
the challenges we were looking at when we were deciding which course we wanted to go through was, well, this is generative, or should we be doing agentic? Are we far enough on this? And there are some core principles, I think, that do apply, right? So we decided to go through the course because it's kind of like you need to know how to do basic math before you can do advanced algebra. So there's some fundamental stuff of just understanding what the technology is, what the learning models are, what the benefits are that could be available. But I'm seeing the same thing where it's just moving so fast that by the time someone produces a course and thinks they're an expert on something, there's a new technology that's displacing it, and things are moving so fast. So yeah, it is. Social media is a great source for staying up on some of this stuff, podcasts, webinars like this one where we can hear from industry experts. So we'll have to have you back in 3 months so that we can talk about the new things that have come out. Look, we're just kind of wrapping up on our time. So Ben, why don't you go throw up that last slide that says like kind of how to get in touch. If folks that are on here are going to be at that upcoming show in the gig economy, we'd love to get in touch with you at WorkBright and talk about how we're doing some of these things. But as we wrap up here on our 45 minutes, give me any like closing thoughts, maybe words of advice, one piece of advice for HR professionals or product leaders in staffing and gig that are looking to kind of future-proof their compliance strategy with AI. What's any closing thoughts and advice you'd have for them?
Uh, I would say the best advice I can give anyone right now is try to live on the internet, because that's the best way to keep up. And I would say, and I'm not saying this in self-interest, I promise, is talk to vendors more. You don't have to buy from them, but you should talk to them, because they're the ones that are also going to educate you about what's out there and how things are evolving. And so maybe you're not ready to buy, maybe you don't even want to buy, but you should still talk to the vendors in spaces that you maybe even do in-house, just to make sure that you're learning about what everyone else is doing and how they're doing it. Uh, I personally have taken probably 5 times as many vendor conversations in the last year than I would normally,
Yeah.
just because I'm learning.
Yeah, it's such good advice. Community and network right now. I mean, there's nothing out there published that's ready. It's people in the trenches that are learning together is really great advice. And vendors and community of professionals navigating the similar challenges is really important right now more than ever. Cool. All right. Well, I really appreciate the time that we spent here today. Such great words of wisdom and ways to think about things. For those of you, you can visit us at workbright.com if you'd like to think about what AI can do for your I-9 processes and other compliance challenges that you have within your workforce. And Vinayak, it's just been a joy to have you on today. I really appreciate you sharing everything with us.
This was really fun. Happy to do it again anytime.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see you back in 3 months.